So, you want to save the world with clean energy? Make money doing it? Confused about the economic and technical realities of residential and commercial solar, batteries, heat pumps, EVs? Want the real-world scoop on new energy technologies, not manufacturer hype? Then tune in to the Weekly Energy Show, hosted by Barry Cinnamon. Insights from Barry's 40-plus years in the solar and energy industry will help you understand the future ways we'll generate and consume energy. And now, here's Barry.
Welcome to this week's Energy Show. Now, today we're talking about reducing emissions in buildings. And here's why. You take a look at the breakdown from the Environmental Protection Agency based on 2022 data. The residential and commercial sectors are the largest contributor of CO2 emissions, mostly from heating and cooling. So, logically, the fastest way to reverse global warming is to eliminate CO2 emissions. And technology changes mean that eminently practical, really good methods are available now to provide energy for buildings. Solar, batteries, electric vehicles, heat pumps, induction cooktops. Obviously, combine that with some energy efficiency measures. But here's what's really changed over the past decade. Every one of these technologies are cheaper, safer, and fundamentally better than before, than the comparable fossil fuel technologies. So why would anyone not want to use these new technologies? Except for, in some cases, the upfront costs and disinformation that's out there. So to overcome that disinformation and to try and improve the situation for upfront costs, we need a policy push. And that's why it's my pleasure to introduce this week's guest, Panama Bartholomy. Panama is the founder and executive director of the Building Decarbonization Coalition, and they focus on eliminating fossil fuel use from the built environment. So those are structures that are already in place. That's mostly buildings. And prior to his working with the Building Decarbonization Coalition, he was the advisor to the chair of the California Energy Commission and then deputy director of efficiency and renewables for 6 years at the CEC. So Panama brings a unique mix of policy and technology expertise, and that's what it takes to overcome this incumbent fossil fuel pushback from these cleaner technologies. So welcome to the show, Panama.
Thank you, Barry. Longtime listener, first-time guest. I'm really honored to be here and looking forward to the conversation, as I always do with you.
All right. Well, that's good. I don't want to build it up too much, but just really glad to have you on the show. We do a lot with heat pumps. We want to do a lot more. And boy, you're just attacking the biggest problems head on. So that's terrific. So before we get started, tell us a little more about the Building Decarbonization Coalition, what it does, how it got started, things like that.
Happy to. It's a coalition of folks that are interested in collaborative solutions to eliminate pollution from buildings. We have manufacturers of heating equipment. We have utilities, the design and construction installation community, government agencies, and nonprofits. And we all get together and we try to figure out exactly what are the barriers holding back the decarbonization of the building stock in America. And then those areas where we can agree, we go and attack it. We work on policy at the state level. We work on market transformation, bringing new products to market, or really helping the industry figure out how to bring products to market. And then we work on consumer education and contractor engagement, two of the most important parties on this. We directly engage there to try to get them, either consumers more excited about this or contractors more engaged and getting them more excited about deploying heat pumps as well.
We'll dive into some of those topics more, and the contractor engagement, keeping them happy to push these new technologies is really, really important. Because for contractors that have been installing natural gas heaters or furnaces or regular cooktops forever, it's a big change. And sometimes they can sell more products, even though it's not the ideal product. And you guys are really tackling the biggest problems. But before we get into that, what are some of the long-term trends that we're seeing for home electrification technologies? Heat pumps, heat pump water heaters, induction cooktops. How is it growing, and how fast is it growing?
It's an amazing time in the space, Barry. 5 years ago, the U.S. was third in the sale of heat pumps compared to the EU and to China. And we've seen massive growth. We sold 4.2 million heat pumps in America last year. We vaulted to the #1 heat pump market in the world, vaulting past the EU as they dropped to about 2.2 million. and then China coming in at the high 2 million themselves. And so we're selling a ton of heat pumps. And a lot of it is because of the excitement around heat pumps that are out there. Some of it is due to programs and policies, but we did some analysis and we actually found that the vast majority of heat pumps being installed across the country aren't taking advantage of federal, state, or utility programs. They're happening because the market is really dramatically shifting. And so, right now, across the country, in 2024 was the third straight year of heat pumps outselling furnaces for space conditioning. And they're coming in at about 58% market share when you look at what people are buying for heating systems around the country. So the HVAC side, HVAC side of heat pumps is going great. Heat pump water heaters, it's a slower uptake, but you still have an up and to the right curve on adoption. Um, the best numbers you can find out there are Energy Star's numbers for Energy Star certified heat pump water heaters that are being sold. It still represents probably less than 10% of the overall market for water heaters across the country, heat pump water heaters. But electric water heaters continue to be the majority of all water heaters sold across the United States. And so many of those are usually inefficient tank water heaters. And so we don't try to encourage those. We try to move to heat pump water heaters. But the good news is if you have a tank storage electric water heater, it's much easier to change that over to a heat pump water heater the next time you change out your system. And so we're seeing up and to the right adoption, but I'm still at a much lower degree than the 58% market share over on the HVAC side. And then on induction stoves, it's going really incredibly. Not a lot of people realize this, but only about 35% of homes across the United States even have gas stoves. 65% of homes across the country already use electric for their cooking. And this surge of interest around induction stoves, a lot of it coming from people's new concerns around health and the air quality impacts of gas stoves has brought about a bunch of interest. 2 months ago, Forbes magazine had a big article about the growing interest in induction stoves, and they quoted this survey that had just been done by the National Kitchen and Bath Association. This is their 2025 Kitchen Trends Report. And so they're interviewing a whole bunch of kitchen designers and professionals. Two-thirds of those professionals interviewed said that induction was going to be the main cooking choice purchased for technology over the next few years. And so we're just seeing a total shift from people just kind of interested from an environmental or energy or health perspective to all of a sudden now saying this is just a better technology to have in your space for cooking. So everything is looking really great for this space right now.
Just the analogy to EVs, for people who have an EV, it's just a better experience than a gas car. And I totally agree with induction cooktops. My wife and I love them, and it's great for parties, and it just worked out perfectly. Much cleaner, much faster. And when it comes to heat pump water heaters and heat pump HVAC, I totally understand the HVAC side of it. It's a little, we're seeing that a little bit. I think it's a little trickier when it comes to replacing a heat pump water heater. When there's a puddle on your garage floor, it's so easy to replace it with a comparable heat pump water. Yes, you do need that extra electrical connection, but once the contractors really get used to it, I think we're going to do really, really well with heat pump water heaters. The lifespan of a hot water tank is about 13 years. So that's half the lifespan of a furnace. So you should see more transition there. But the benefits are there. So the benefits are clear, but what's holding back the HVAC system deployments? What are the demand drivers that we're not really clicking on to get that cranking faster?
Yeah, it's a few factors. One, there's just the power of incumbency. You have a whole bunch of small, medium-sized businesses that do furnace installations, and they've always done furnace installations or boiler installations. That's just what their business have been built on, sometimes multi-generational, installing very similar technology. And so some of this, and if you call up your HVAC local technician, they're usually booked out, a month and a half, 2 months. And so they're not always looking for what is the new thing for me to do because they're already doing great, many of them. And so you have this incumbency issue of helping the installer community realize the inevitability of this shift, that a combination of rapidly accelerating gas prices, public policy, and consumer interests are all driving towards a change, and that you're going to be having to put in more and more and eventually only heat pumps for your HVAC efforts. So that's one. Number two, we're still dealing with consumer knowledge gap on this. Consumers really don't know to ask for heat pumps just yet. Most consumers are only engaging in their HVAC system every 20 years when it breaks or when there's a problem. And so nobody wants to become an expert on an HVAC system except for us, Barry. But most consumers, they just want to be able to call somebody, get it fixed as quickly as possible, get the cold back, get the heat back, depending on the time of year. And so they don't know to ask the questions about, hey, how do I actually get to this heat pump? And so we need really great campaigns to be helping consumers there. Um, in some cases, you are still dealing with some upfront cost issues. If you look at a central HVAC system across the country, it's a comparable cost to putting a heat pump in. Every house is different, every situation is different, but in general, what we're seeing from different programs and the costs, it's about the same. But you do see some upselling from some contractors who are putting in some of their first few installations, and they're pricing in some of the risk that they have about having to come back and to be able to talk to the consumer to help them understand how heat pumps work. I think people look at their bill and they quite often they look at their gas bill and they look at their electric bill and they see, oh, my gas bill is cheaper than my electric bill. Like, why would I want to add more to my electric bill? Without really thinking through the fact that the vast majority of your gas use is just a few months out of the year, and your electric bill is used well, your electricity is used well throughout the year. And so I think people have a hard time sometimes understanding about how it will affect their actual finances and be able to either raise or lower their bill. Um, and I'll say lastly, we got to have better programs. We're in a climate change transition right now, and so we have to be encouraging people to do things that they wouldn't normally do on their own. And that's why we have incentive programs for it. And I'd say by and large, we in America aren't great at rolling out programs that really work well for the most important constituency. That's the installer community, the folks that are helping consumers get this technology into their house and helping them work through these incentive programs. And if these programs are stopping and starting, if they're complicated to use, if you have to spend more money to even go through the program than you're getting from the program, it just doesn't work. And so if we're really going to be trying to encourage people to be taking actions they wouldn't normally do, we actually have to have programs that are going to work not only for consumers, but also work for contractors. And so I think if we can clear up those things, we're going to be having a lot more progress on heat pumps.
Yeah, I'd hate to say it because it was so hard to get, but having a federal tax credit for heat pumps is just by far and away the most elegant, fastest way to do it. And we did that in the solar industry, and it supercharged the whole industry. Working through all these local programs is very, very hard for contractors. And I'd like to see most of it happen through the distributors so that the distributors would kind of take that cost. But there's still a lot of paperwork in the background. All right, I love the way that you're portraying this and focusing on making it easy for contractors. A good friend, Nate Adams, when I started talking about heat pumps about 5 years ago with him, he's like, well, no contractors like incentive programs other than the fact that it's a good marketing technique. But there are some that work really, really well. And I just love to take off with those. And his other point about HVAC is that the difference in the cost between the heat pump hardware and air conditioner is only about a $200 reversing valve. And if every single air conditioner compressor was sold with a heat pump accessory on the side, make it a lot easier.
Absolutely. I mean, this is colloquially called in our field like AC to heat pump, where your AC air conditioner breaks, just go ahead and put in a heat pump. And eventually, can we move towards manufacturers in the United States only selling two-way air conditioners or heat pumps? And so the good news is this makes so much sense that we're now actually having local jurisdictions in California requiring this. We already have 6 jurisdictions that just in the last 3 months have adopted new laws to say when your central air conditioning system breaks, you're going to have to put in a heat pump to replace it. And we expect by the end of the year, we're going to have 6 more. So we're going to have 12 cities across California who've adopted these AC to heat pump requirements. The state, in their most recent building code that'll go into effect January 1st, is requiring this for small commercial buildings. And so all small commercial buildings, schools, hotels, 2-story office buildings, commercial retail buildings. If your central air conditioning system breaks, you're going to have to use a heat pump. It's the first one in the nation to implement this, and totally agree with nearly everything Nate says, and especially on this policy.
Yeah. Now, what are the cities in California that have those regulations in place or are going to be putting them in place?
Yeah, a lot of them are in the South Bay area, and so the right around San Jose, Menlo Park, Los Altos Hills, a bunch of those communities, but also Glendale in Southern California has passed this, and so we're expecting a couple Southern California cities to pass by the end of the year as well.
Yeah, we see some good incentives from some of the local communities here in Silicon Valley through Silicon Valley Clean Energy or Peninsula Clean Energy or San Jose Clean Energy. So that really, really helps. Our experience, because we're putting in heat pumps, we've been doing it for about 5 years, and it's really ramping up steadily. What's interesting is whenever we go out to a customer that says, I'm thinking about a heat pump, they get quotes from more established, longtime HVAC companies, and those salespeople inevitably try to push just fixing the old gas furnace, inevitably. And luckily, we have people that are fairly well educated about the benefits, and also many of our customers already have solar, or they're putting in solar. And so when you look at the compatibility between getting your electricity from solar compared to just buying it from the utility, it's an absolute killer. I put heat pumps and solar into my house about 6 or 7 years ago, and it's phenomenal. I mean, I look at from my hot water heating, it's costing me about $7 a month to heat the hot water. The water actually costs way more from San Jose. It's out of control, but that works great. And the easiest transition that we ever did was from rooftop units to heat pumps when we renovated our building here in Los Gatos. It's a 75-year-old building, concrete tilt-up building in Los Gatos, flat roof. It had 6 package units on the roof. They're gas-fired heaters and air conditioners, and we just lifted those off and dropped in heat pumps, had to do a little bit of duct work. And now it's all done. And now that we have solar on the roof also, the building is carbon negative, including all the EV charging that we do. So it can be done really, really easily. And there's some really, really good incentives for that. So it's just going to continue to grow steadily.
Yeah, I'm really excited. I know that the solar industry is going through so many changes right now, and just the simple math of, if you electrify that home, you're in some places either doubling or tripling the demand of that house. And so you would have to have a lot more solar and storage on it. And so I'm really excited to see how electrification is really starting to get more and more into solar installers' business models. And I think that's going to really help it take off. I mean, they all joke about like there's nothing better than peanut butter and chocolate together. I mean, that's the way I think about solar and heat pumps.
Yeah, definitely. I've got a friend, Andrew Krause, you might know him. He's kind of working on something called solar-led electrification, and we're working pretty closely together. But it is absolutely the peanut butter and chocolate analogy there. When it comes to heat pump water heaters, kind of the challenge we have there is that when there's companies out near us where one of them's called fast water heaters, and I assume they do a good job, but when there's a leak on your floor, you want it fixed that day or the next day, and there's still distribution issues with the heat pump water heaters. We try and keep some in stock, but it's still always a little bit more complicated because what happens with collecting the substantial incentives, like the $2,500 incentives in most locales, you have to get a building permit, and that requires you to do some hot water heater upgrades to make sure that your hot water heating system's up to code. And so that could cost an extra few grand and delay things. So I think it'll be much better once contractors are really experienced with this, where they just have everything in stock, they can, I have an opening tomorrow, or they can bring on some extra crews to get it done. And then you really don't have to wait at all. You don't have to go 2 days without taking a shower.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that's the emergency nature of replacements is one of the biggest barriers to heat pump water heaters. You may have a spouse or a partner willing to have like a cold day or two, waiting for HVAC, HVAC replacement for a heat pump, but there are not many that are going to wait more than a few days for that hot shower.
Oh,
Uh,
yeah. Otherwise, they're not your spouse anymore.
Yes, yeah, they want it back immediately. So that's one of the big barriers on that. You also have some form factor issues. Where you have your water heater, your gas or your on-demand water heater may not be the best place to have a heat pump water heater. You want to have a space that has a good airflow for it. They're generally a little bit taller than a gas tank water heater. So there are some form factor issues. We're starting to see more and more models come onto the market. I know you wanted to talk about some of the innovation we're seeing in the space. And so I'm expecting that as we see more and more adoption, the funny thing is what we're hearing from manufacturers is actually they're going to start making these simpler and simpler. So right now there you have some of the kind of top of the line heat pump water heaters out there with a lot of features, and we're going to be seeing simpler and simpler ones as they start to be required through programs like the Bay Area Air District's new requirements that'll go into effect on January 1st of next year. So I think we'll see a lot of changes there. And I would say that the plumbing space is probably even more of the incumbent issue that I brought up earlier than the HVAC issue. If you know how to put in an air conditioner, you're 95, 97% of the way there about putting in a heat pump for space conditioning. But for a heat pump water heater, that is a different thing for a lot of the installers that just are ready just to come in, as you said, do a fast water heater replacement and get out to the next one. It takes a little bit more for heat pump water, and I think we're going to see an adjustment in the field from that.
There's going to continue to be plumbers who say, "Hey, I can get you this unit later today or tomorrow, and if you want the heat pump water heater, we're going to have to take some time." It's also in their they're motivated to do that because they want to get the quick bucks, and
Yep.
they don't want to kind of search around for something that's going to take them longer, and even though it's more expensive. All right, well, you've been working a lot on simplifying some of these incentive programs. Tell us about the California Heat Pump Partnership.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to. So, you may remember back in 2022, right in between the death of Joe Biden's Build Back Better and the birth of the Inflation Reduction Act, there was this moment in time right there where everyone was really wondering, are we going to get a national climate bill actually passed? And so in that window, Governor Newsom released a letter directing all of his agencies to do everything they can to be able to do anything to be able to make up for the loss of federal leadership on climate. And so one of the things he said in the letter was, I want to get to 6 million heat pumps deployed in California by 2030. At the time, we had about 1.75 million heat pumps deployed back in 2022. And he directed his agencies to work together to try to make that happen. And so we and some others really worked very closely with the California Energy Commission to say we should use this goal to be able to bring together a public-private partnership between the state of California, manufacturers of heat pumps, distributors and retailers like Ferguson and Home Depot, and the major electric utilities of the state to be able to come together and actually work on the types of policy and market changes that are necessary in order to be able to meet the governor's goal, a rapid escalation of the deployment of heat pumps across California. This is for both water heating and space conditioning. And so we stood up this partnership in 2023. We have manufacturers that represent about 80% of North American market share of HVAC sales, about 75% of North American market share of water heater sales. We have all the major electric utilities across the state, some of the big retailers, and then the Public Utilities Commission, the California Energy Commission, and the Air Board, all participating in this. And what we're working on is exactly what you said, is like, how do you get better programs from the state of California that work better for consumers and contractors? How do you actually pass laws that are necessary to be able to streamline the deployment of these technologies and to make them the more attractive choice? And critically, how do you run a broad scale consumer education campaign across California that gets people's attention around a really funny thing to buy? You're running a consumer campaign around something that people only buy every maybe 13 to 20 years. And so how do you create a little bit of a brainworm? No offense to, our Health and Human Services Secretary, but a brainworm that gets inside someone's brain and they remember, oh yeah, I'm supposed to ask for electric, I think, when my contractor comes by to replace my water heater, and let's talk about that. And so that'll be a big part of the partnership will be a statewide consumer campaign to really just give the message of electric is better, and here's where to go to get information around changing your house over.
And we're looking forward to how that rolls out. We're working with the distributor that you mentioned, and it'll really be nice when the incentives kind of go through the distributor rather than us having to kind of fill out all the paperwork or hold the customer's hand. I was over at a customer's house yesterday filling out paperwork for a local solar rebate. It's a lot of work. Looking ahead, we've seen a lot of technology improvements on these heat pump devices, but what's coming down the pike? I see better induction cooktops. I see 120 volt heat pump water heaters. I see some of these units that are actually building batteries in, and I see some companies that have new heat pump units that basically hang over a double hung window with a compressor outside and an air handler inside, and they all look phenomenally better than what we've had in the past.
Yeah, thanks for asking, Mary. There's some really exciting new technology in the market right now and coming to market. You mentioned the 120 volt heat pump water heaters. That was something that the idea really sprang up in 2018, and COVID delayed it a little bit, but we were finally able to roll it out from two major manufacturers across the United States. And there's five manufacturers total supplying these in the American market right now. And we're seeing the real benefits of this. So the concept behind this is that with a traditional heat pump water heater, it's 240 volts. A lot of people don't have that sort of electric supply where they have their water heater. And so you need to be able to then pay sometimes $500,000 to run that 220 line over to that water heater. And so instead, if you could get a heat pump water heater that you could just plug into an existing circuit, or have a simple 110 circuit be able to provide it with the electricity, it can be a lot cheaper and a lot easier to access. And so the manufacturers have brought it to market, and we have some really recent data from California's TEC program, our large scale heat pump water heater incentive program. And it's really impressive numbers. Just about a little over 1/4 of all of the heat pump water heaters installed over the past 3 years have been these 120 volt heat pump water heaters. And it has significantly dropped down the need to upgrade electrical capacity, to upgrade your electrical panel to be able to put in a heat pump water heater. It dropped from 27% of all installations requiring an upgrade down to 2% of installations requiring an upgrade. And it's actually lowered the price of installs by 20% compared to 240 volt heat pump water heaters. And so we're seeing just real cost benefits from consumers from these 120 volts ones.
Yeah, and I know how expensive it is to, run that extra 220 volt line to code. It's going to be inspected. Most plumbers don't have the expertise to do that. Just out of curiosity, what's the efficiency difference between a 120 volt heat pump and a 240 volt? What's the disadvantage of 120?
It takes a little bit longer to heat up is a short answer. Yeah. But for most people, if you're on the right rate, if you have an electric water heating baseline, if you are heating at night, you won't really notice the difference for it. But it could take an hour to 2 hours longer to really reheat the entire tank compared to a 240.
Yeah, which isn't bad. If you take showers in the morning, then you got the rest of the day to recover. Shower in the evening, you got the rest of the night to recover. That's fine. So we're going to have to start testing those, because we're still doing the 240 volt, mostly Rheem professional series, and they're pricey. They have a lot of features, but for customers that are concerned and they're in a real hurry, that is one way to say, hey, we can be there and get the system done within a day or two. What about some of those induction cooktop systems that have built-in batteries. And I think also with Carrier announced that they're putting a battery into some of their HVAC systems.
Yeah, we have this new wave of battery integrated appliances that's hitting the market, and so it's really impressive. There's two major manufacturers now on the induction side that are putting these into their stoves. And the benefit of those is basically what you're able to plug into any 110 outlet and be able to charge the battery that's inside the stove. And the stoves aren't actually running off of the electrical supply from the house. They're running off of the battery. And so you're able to just over time just trickle charge that battery through a normal outlet, and then you're able to run completely off the battery, even if you lose power. Some of the manufacturers have done what they call the Thanksgiving test, where they got all four burners and the oven going at the same time, and they're able to run it for 2 days, even on Thanksgiving mode.
We're gonna do that test again this year. I'm always watching how fast Thanksgiving depletes the batteries because we've got four burners going, two ovens going, people in the house. We'll see how that works out. I have bigger batteries now, so I should be able to make it through at least until 9 o'clock at night.
Depends on the size of your turkey, probably. So it's really exciting to see because I know people still have concern. We still have an antiquated grid in a lot of ways. And so people do have concerns around power outages. And even though the concerns are far outweigh the actual reality of how often we have outages, that is still a concern. And so having a technology like this that can say, even in the rare instances of a power outage, you'll still be able to cook your food. What a lot of people don't realize is that most of our gas appliances require electricity to run, whether it's a water heater with an electric ignition, whether it's the fan for your furnace, whether it's the electric ignition for your stove, you still require it. And so it's technology like this that really helps for the true resilience of these times as we're in this kind of mid-transition and still working on our grid. You mentioned Carrier, and indeed, they are the first major HVAC company to have now come out and publicly said they are testing models where you're putting batteries in HVAC systems to be able to also help with not only resiliency, but also price arbitrage, and to be able to perhaps charge up that battery during lower cost energy times, and then be able to use it during peak and run the whole system off the battery. And so I think, those are pretty heavy energy users, and we'll have to see what size of battery is appropriate for that kind of deployment. But I'm excited to see more and more of these batteries being put into appliances.
The HVAC one made a lot of sense to me. That the challenge with putting a battery in a cooktop or an oven is it's inside the house, and we install literally tons of batteries every single day, and all the batteries we install are outside just because the building codes can get strict about whether or not what kind of precautions you have to take if you're going to put a battery indoors. So I'm sure that the stove companies are working through that, but Carrier shouldn't have as big a problem because the air conditioning compressor is outside the house. But lots of potential for that. So who's against this transition? More specifically, how are fossil fuel companies fighting against what BDC is doing?
Yeah, that's some of the largest groups that are opposed. It's an existential crisis for them, and you see it not only from them and what they're doing, but also the investment community. A couple years ago, Moody's put out a big report calling it an existential threat to fossil fuel natural gas companies, the electrification of buildings. And the real big fear is that they end up in a death spiral where you have people start to exit the gas system as they electrify. We have more and more of our communities requiring the electrification of new construction, so you don't have growth on the gas system. But the costs of that gas system are fixed and have to be paid for by whoever is left on that gas system. And so, as you have less people to pay for that gas system, you're going to have to raise rates, and that will encourage electrification. And so more and more people will electrify, and so you'll have to keep raising rates, and you can see the beginning of a death spiral for gas utilities. And so they're doing everything they can to fight against this in state policy and local policy, working with local city council members and boards of supervisors, working with federal legislators to try to put in place laws that prevent local governments or states from being able to adopt building codes or programs to encourage or require this, trying to find ways to really provide misinformation to local governments and consumers around supposed benefits of gas, but also just really untrue statements around heat pumps and electrification. So those are some of the major ones. You also have folks whose job is in the gas industry, and so the workers in the gas industry and the challenges that they see about losing jobs and livelihood from this transition. And which is one of the reasons why we're so excited, Barry, around thermal energy networks. It's not going to work in every application, but thermal energy networks is this amazing opportunity to be able to actually turn these gas companies and these gas company workers more into heat providers. You could use the same pipe that we're putting in the ground for gas to instead be running ambient loops of water to be providing heating, cooling, water heating to homes that would have individual heat pumps in them, geothermal heat pumps, and the water being provided through community systems. And so there's now 14 states who've adopted laws to encourage the development of thermal energy networks. And we think of it as a way to take away some of that existential threat for gas utilities and gas unions by giving them an opportunity to play a role in the clean energy future in this transition as well.
No, yeah, it makes policy sense to me. I think San Jose is looking at some kind of partnership like that with PG&E for some downtown expansions. And my personal take on it is air-to-air heat pumps are probably going to be more cost effective, but you're not going to be able to save that natural gas utility or those workers. But technology always has a way of balancing out, even though it might take some time. So we'll see what happens. What about geothermal heating? Is that something that you're seeing get out there as far as adding the efficiency of a geothermal loop for a heat pump?
We are, and I know you got quite a bit of experience in your career on this space. And what we're seeing is some real advancements through companies like Dandelion Energy of really cutting down the time and the cost of drilling, which has been one of the really big barriers for geothermal. And so as we see more and more of that sort of innovation, I think just the pure efficiency benefits of geothermal heat pumps are going to be able to come to the fore a lot more. As we see them deployed more and more for thermal energy networks, I think you're also going to see it. So we're already seeing an uptick in sales, but I think through innovation, you're going to see even more. And crazy enough, it's like seems to be the one part of the clean energy economy that the Trump administration actually likes. They're still giving out grants for research and supportive organizations that are working on geothermal drilling, geothermal energy, geothermal thermal energy networks. It's you're still actually seeing money from the federal government for that.
Yeah, it's Chris Wright is saying, hey, we're using steel pipes. We use those for drilling. We've got drilling rigs that we can put to work, both horizontal and vertical, and it's a lot of the same workforce that can be deployed for that. The fact that it's clean is a downside there, but we'll see how it evolves. I don't know if I mentioned, but one of my first jobs out of college was for a very early stage residential geothermal heat pump company in the Boston area. It's called Megatech. And when I pointed out to the CEO that it was costing us more money to drill the hole than the customers could possibly save compared to oil, I got fired. But that's life. So it's what you got to go through.
Inconvenient truths, very
hate to say it. But all right, so let's talk about some of the public policy that's going on right now. How is the current Trump administration withdrawal of incentives affected the Building Decarbonization Group and just the trend towards these better technologies?
Yeah, well, I think it's still a little bit of a wait and see. So the Inflation Reduction Act had up to $2,000 tax credit for heat pumps and heat pump water heaters. They also provided $9 billion in rebates that were going to go out to states for building electrification and building efficiency. And I agree with your earlier statement. I just think it's crazy to have 50 different programs around the country, all these local energy offices in states trying to develop these programs and design them. We should just centralize it and make it easy. But anyway, they put it out there. And so what you saw in the big bill that the Congress passed and the president signed, sometimes called the One Big Beautiful Bill, is a repeal of the tax credits, the $2,000 tax credits, and those will end at the end of the year. So get your heat pumps and heat pump water heaters in now, if you want that tax credit. They did not repeal the $9 billion in rebates. And you are still seeing states, don't tell anybody, but you're still seeing states actually roll out these rebate programs. By the end of last year, there was only a handful, and now you have three handfuls of states that have actually rolled out these rebate programs, even under this new administration. And so these are rebates to provide incentives for low, moderate income households, for induction stoves, for panel upgrades, for heat pumps, for heat pump water heaters. And then some of them are also rolling out the energy efficiency programs called the HOMES program, which is all around how do you actually increase the overall efficiency of homes, and depending on the overall efficiency and actual savings, then you get a rebate based on those savings. And so you're encouraged to get deeper and deeper levels of efficiency. So it's still rolling out, but like I said, the analysis that we did for the 2023 tax year showed that less than 10% of all of the heat pumps that were sold that year across America took advantage of that tax credit. And we think it's actually a similar number for the rebate programs. And so the vast majority of heat pumps being sold across this country are due to the market changes and, dare I say, vibes. When we started this movement back in 2016, 2017 with a bunch of other groups, all the stories and our efforts were around like, what's a heat pump? And just in the past few months, you had both New York Times and Washington Post running articles about how to choose the right heat pump for your home. And so the times have just changed really dramatically, and you're starting to see installers focus on heat pump advertisements, on digital ads, on billboards. You're starting to see heat pumps put up by the industry a lot more. So, yes, I would love to have the tax credit still in place. But the good news is that the market has shifted, and I think it's not going back at this point.
Yeah. So to that point, what's the trend line look for your new technologies? How do you think things are going to proceed and grow over the next 3 years?
Yeah, we've seen a really consistent growth of heat pumps compared to furnace sales, and even air conditioning sales. 10 years ago, we were selling twice as many air conditioners in the United States as heat pumps. Last year, it was only 30% more air conditioners than heat pumps. And so this growth of heat pumps has really bit into both furnace sales as well as air conditioning sales. What we're seeing right now, Barry, this year is an adjustment based on the tariffs that have been put in place and the effect of those tariffs, and the uncertainty caused by this new administration over public policy, not only on the incentive programs, but also what's going to happen overall on laws that go into effect. And so we've seen a really significant decline overall in the HVAC market this year. We're looking at 40% drop year over year from last year's shipments in September, October, August timeframes. And
It's a
so
huge drop. What's causing that drop, or is it just economic uncertainty?
it's those things that I mentioned. It's the tariffs. It's consumer confidence is way down, and so in those times, people repair more often than replace. And then it's the uncertainty of policy for a lot of the market actors as well. So it's not just heat pumps. Let me be clear. This is across the board on all HVAC technologies. But we just saw a couple good interviews with the CEO of Carrier and a few other CEOs saying that they expect this to rebound as they're starting to get a better handle on tariffs, as some of the tariffs are being relaxed, as some of the refrigerant shortages are being dealt with. You're going to start to see an uptick across the market as well. And I think that continuing trend of heat pumps outselling furnaces and coming close to outselling air conditioners is going to continue.
All right. All right. Good. All right. Well, just some non-specific business questions, but I'm just curious, how did you get interested in environmentalism?
Yeah, I was raised in a all solar house in the boondocks of Humboldt County, California,
Wow. Wow.
on the same property as David Katz,
Ah, wow.
one of,
Okay.
yeah, yep, one of the
Yeah.
pioneers of the
Yeah.
solar industry in America.
He has nicer hair than you, though.
Yes, yeah, he's done a better job of keeping it, absolutely. And so I think it's been part of who I am, but it wasn't a real big part of my personality until I got into college. And a couple professors really changed my life up at Humboldt State University, now Cal Poly Humboldt. A poli sci professor and a whole earth engineering professor has really opened my eyes. I got an amazing internship in Sacramento right out of college, and I was off. The early aughts and the teens in California were an amazing time to work on climate, clean energy, buildings efficiency, renewable energy. It was our first climate programs. It was the birth of the California Solar Initiative. I mean, it was so many different programs, and the momentum caught me, and I've never been able to go back. So I'm just really excited that in a place like California, you get to work close enough to the people that are running the state that is only 2 or 3 degrees removed from you. Whereas, at the international level or federal level, you may never get that close to the halls of power. And so you can make a real significant difference here in the fourth largest economy in the world.
Yeah. No, no, my path was very, very similar to yours. All right. So let's talk about something personal. What's your favorite way to cook a steak?
Yes, yes. So for me, it's that tofurkey,
Ah,
or it's that fake steak, but it is on a cast iron in a cast iron pan or in a cast iron griddle on an induction stove. There's some mythology or concern out there about like, can you cook everything on an induction stove that you can cook with gas? And you absolutely can. They make amazing wok shaped induction stoves to put the wok directly into the stove, and then it brings up the heat on all sides, which you really need in order to get the pure wok taste. And there's some incredible wok stoves coming out of China right now just for the commercial use for like really big woks.
wow.
Great to see. Um, you can do grills. You can cook up peppers really well. I mean, basically any cuisine can go really well on induction stove. And so for us, we have a Verona, 36-inch Verona at our house, 5 burners, cooking on it last night. We absolutely love it. And induction cooking is kind of like electric vehicles. Like once you take a test drive, you're hooked on it. And then sometimes it's incredible. You're like, I cannot believe I'm getting like power from the sun, and then I'm putting it in my car, and then it's taking me places. This is amazing. And other times you're like, yeah, it's a car. It gets me from point A to B. And it's like that for induction stoves for me sometimes too. Like sometimes like this is amazing. You're using electromagnetic fields to be able to agitate molecules inside a pan to transfer the heat to the food. Other times it's like, yeah, it's oatmeal.
And
So
and it cooks better. It cooks faster. I mean, we were at a house renting, and it had the old fashioned electric burner, and I was burning everything because I forgot that an induction cooktop and a gas stove, if you turn it off, it goes off. But those old fashioned glowing burners, they just keep cooking things, and so much of a better experience. So you just have to buy a couple of heavy duty cast iron pans. Many people already have them, or carbon steel, and it's just fantastic. All right, how can people get in touch with you?
yeah, so we have this fantastic website, buildingdecarb.org, that has literally the largest repository of information on building decarbonization there, on policies, on reports, on news stories. It's just this huge repository of information. We break it down by topic area, we break it down by state, we break it all sorts of different breakdowns. It's a wonderful, wonderful website with a ton of information. You can also see the type of activities we do. We host webinars all the time. And so, we also put out a monthly newsletter with everything that happened in the last month on building decarbonization around the country. It's a free newsletter, and it's a great way to keep up on the industry. For me, myself, give me a yell, Panama at buildingdecarb.org. And I'm always happy to talk to folks about their questions, their concerns, or ideas on building decarbonization.
That's all the time we have on this week's Energy Show. Thanks, Panama, for joining me. And thanks to all of our listeners for tuning in. And if you missed any of today's show, you can always go to our website at energyshow.biz and listen to the podcasts.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's Energy Show.